the smell of horses and sweat. That's what you remember most. You're sitting in a wooden cart moving east. Your wrists are raw from the ropes. The woman next to you hasn't spoken in 3 days. She just stares at the horizon with empty eyes. Your name was Zarina, 16 years old, daughter of a silk merchant in Samarkand. A month ago, you were learning to weave carpets with your mother. She was teaching you the pattern her grandmother had taught her. 4 generations of the same design. That pattern died with your city. The riders came at dawn, not screaming, not chaotic, silent, organized, terrifying. They didn't burn everything immediately, like other armies. First came the scribes, men with ink-stained fingers who walked through the survivors, writing on scrolls. They separated you from your mother in less than an hour. You screamed her name. She screamed yours. A soldier hit you so hard you couldn't breathe. When you looked up again, she was being pushed toward another group, the group walking toward the river. You never saw her again. A man grabbed your face, turned it left, right, checked your teeth like you were a horse at market. He wrote something on his scroll and marked your wrist with ink. A number. That's all you are now. And the cart keeps moving east. This is the story of what the Mongols did to the women of the nations they conquered. They didn't kill them. That would have been mercy. They kept them, used them, erased them from the inside out. Because Genghis Khan understood something no conqueror before him had grasped. Swords win battles, but wombs win centuries. And the most terrifying part isn't what Genghis Khan did. It's that it worked so well that in 2003, Oxford University geneticists published a study called The Genetic Legacy of the Mongols. What they found shocked the scientific world. 16 million men alive today carry the evidence in their DNA. You might be one of them. If this story grips you, drop a like and subscribe. It takes a second and helps us keep pulling voices out of the silence. But before you understand what happened to Zarina, you need to understand the man who built the machine that swallowed her. Because Genghis Khan wasn't born a monster. He wasn't even born Genghis Khan. That name, universal ruler, he wouldn't earn it for another 30 years. In 1171, he was just a 9-year-old boy named Temujin, kneeling beside his father's body on the frozen steppes of Mongolia. Yesugei was a tribal chief, respected, feared. Now he's a corpse, foam still drying on his lips, poisoned by a rival tribe that had shared a meal with him the night before. Within a week, his father's allies abandoned them. His mother Holan was left alone with 5 children in the cruelest winter Mongolia had seen in decades. They ate roots, rats, anything that moved. Temujin learned at 9 years old the lesson that would define everything. The world is divided between those who take and those who are taken. At 16, the lesson became personal. His betrothed, Berta, was kidnapped by an enemy tribe, the Merkits. For 8 months, Temujin searched. When he finally rescued her, Berta was pregnant. Was the child his or her captor's? He never knew, but standing in that burned camp surrounded by dead Merkits, something clicked inside him. The men who took Berta were dead, but what they did to her would live on. In the child, in the children that child might have. Conquest by sword is temporary. Armies lose, empires fall. But children are permanent. He raised Berta's son as his own, but he never forgot the lesson. In 1206, the Mongol tribes proclaimed him Genghis Khan, universal ruler. The starving boy from the steppes now commanded the largest army the world had ever seen, and he would apply that lesson on a scale no one had imagined. Which brings us back to Zarina. And the cart moving east, the cart stops. Zarina doesn't know how many days have passed, 8, maybe 10. Time blurs when you can't see the sun. They've arrived at a camp, hundreds of tents stretching toward the horizon, and carts, so many carts filled with women, some crying, some silent, some with empty eyes. A Mongol woman walks down the line, not a prisoner, an administrator. She carries a wooden tablet and speaks with the efficiency of someone counting grain. She stops at Zarina's cart, looks at the number on her wrist, writes something. This one, officers section. Zarina doesn't understand yet, but she will. The system didn't emerge fully formed. Genghis Khan built it over years. The first test was against the Tangut kingdom in 1209. Other conquerors killed and looted. Genghis Khan sent scribes ahead of his army. They infiltrated cities disguised as merchants, counting women the way generals count fortifications. Ages, physical condition, family lineage, all documented before the first arrow flew. When the Tangut cities fell, the sorting began. Men of fighting age, eliminated or conscripted. The elderly, released to spread terror to the next city. The women, divided with the precision of a merchant sorting silk. Young, healthy, capable of bearing children, marked and assigned to caravans. The others, old, sick, injured, left behind. The Mongols had a term for them. Not worth the food. Genghis Khan reviewed the system personally, spent 3 days examining records. How many women captured? How many pregnancies resulted? He wasn't satisfied. Too many dying in transport, not enough births. He issued new protocols. Better food. Medical attention for pregnant women. Penalties for soldiers who damaged valuable inventory. This wasn't mercy. This was optimization. He was engineering a system. And like any engineer, he measured success in output. The administrators who ran the caravans reported directly to him. They sent monthly updates, numbers, statistics, production rates. Women who failed to produce children were reassigned to labor. Women who produced healthy children were rewarded with better food, better treatment. The system created incentives, terrible incentives, but incentives that worked. There were even specialists, women trained to examine new captives, to determine their health, their age, their potential, to sort them into categories before they even reached the caravans. The Mongols called these specialists counters. Their job was simple: maximize output, minimize waste. A young woman in good health was valuable. An older woman with experience in childbirth was useful. A woman who was sick, injured, or past childbearing age was a resource drain. The counters made these decisions in seconds. A glance, a mark on a tablet, a direction pointed. Left meant the caravans, right meant something else. No one talked about what happened to the ones who went right. Within 5 years the model was perfected, ready to be deployed across an empire. Zarina has been in the camp for 2 weeks when she sees him. Genghis Khan, older than she imagined, mid-60s, a weathered face carved from stone. He rides through the camp slowly, surveying his inventory. He stops near Zarina's section. She keeps her head down. Looking at him is forbidden, but she hears his voice, low, gravelly. The Persian ones. They read, they write, useful for households, mark them. That's all. He moves on. Zarina understands now what she is. Not a prisoner, not a slave, a resource, allocated by category. The man who decided her fate spent less time on her than he would choosing a horse. By 1219, the system was ready for its ultimate test. The Khwarezmian Empire. 15 million people, 400,000 soldiers, one of the largest empires in the world. The Shah ruled from Samarkand to the borders of India. He commanded armies that had never known defeat. He controlled trade routes that connected China to Europe. He thought he was untouchable. The Shah made a fatal mistake. His governor executed Mongol trade envoys, killed them, took their goods. Genghis Khan sent ambassadors demanding justice. The Shah executed them too, shaved their beards, the ultimate insult, and sent their heads back to Mongolia. He thought the Mongols were another raiding tribe, barbarians who would retreat at the first sign of real resistance. He had no idea what he'd awakened. Genghis Khan gathered his commanders. This campaign would be different. I will make them a lesson that echoes for 1,000 years. I will tear out their roots so completely that their grandchildren's grandchildren will not remember they existed. He meant every word. Samarkand fell in 5 days. The chronicles say over 100,000 women were taken from Samarkand alone. Sorted, categorized, distributed. Noble women to officers, educated women to administrative households, common women to soldiers. Zarina's mother, probably in her 40s, was not worth the food. Zarina herself, 16 and literate, was marked for officers. She would be expected to bear children for the next 20 years. But Samarkand was just the beginning. Bukhara fell next. The Mongols burned the great library. Centuries of knowledge turned to ash in a single afternoon. Then Urgench, the capital of Khwarezm. The Mongols diverted a river to flood the city. Those who didn't drown were sorted like the others. Then Merv. Merv may have been the largest city in the world. Population estimates range from 500,000 to over 1 million. A centre of learning, trade, culture. Libraries that held knowledge from Greece, Persia, India, China. The siege lasted 15 days. When the walls fell, the killing began. The chronicles claim the Mongols killed over 1 million people in Merv alone. They spent 13 days counting the dead, stacking bodies, recording numbers. Even the Mongol generals were disturbed by the scale. One reportedly said, "We have made a desert and called it peace, and for every person killed there was a woman taken." The caravan stretched for miles. Women from Persia beside women from China. Languages they'd never heard. All marked, numbered, allocated. What you're about to discover is how this system erased entire peoples from existence. Subscribe, because Crown and Dagger doesn't hide from history's darkest chapters. 3 months in the caravan, Zarina has stopped counting days. Every day is the same. Walk, eat what they give you, sleep chained to the cart. The woman beside her, Fatima, was a teacher in Bukhara, had a husband, had children, She told Zarina this on the 4th night, then never spoke again. Zarina has learned things in the caravan, things she tries not to think about during the day. She's learned what the marks on wrists mean. A single line, common labour. 2 lines, assigned to soldiers. A circle, officers. She's learned that pregnancy is protection. Pregnant women get more food, are kept healthier because they're producing. Some women try to get pregnant quickly. Survival strategy. Others try to prevent it. Whispered knowledge. Herbs that might work. Most don't. A woman in the next cart died trying. Bled out in the night. Her body was dumped beside the road. The caravan didn't stop. Children, born in the caravans, are taken after 3 years. Sent to Mongol families, raised speaking only Mongolian. They never learn their mothers' names, their mothers' languages, their mothers' stories. The separation was always sudden. One morning, the child would be there. The next morning, gone. No warning, no goodbye. Mothers who resisted had their rations cut. Mothers who fought back were beaten. Mothers who tried to hide their children were made examples of. The message was clear. These children don't belong to you. They never did. The chain breaks. That's the point. But here's what haunts Zarina most. She's starting to forget. The pattern her mother was teaching her. The carpet design passed down 4 generations. She traces it in the dirt at night, but pieces are missing. Was it 3 loops or 4? Did the border curve left or right? What colour was the centre thread? She can't remember. Her mother's face is blurring. The sound of her voice, the way she hummed while she worked at the loom. The smell of the dyes she used, gone, fading, like a painting left in the sun. She tries to hold on to other things. The name of her street, the view from her window, the taste of the bread her mother baked on festival days. But each day, something else slips away. A detail she swore she'd never forget. A memory she thought was permanent. This is how the system works. Not with swords, with time. Every day in the caravan, you become less yourself. Your memories erode, your language rusts, your identity dissolves, and your children, they won't even know what was lost. The administrators understood this. They separated women from the same city. Speaking your native language was discouraged. Friendships were prevented. Isolation accelerates erasure. A woman alone forgets faster than a woman with others who remember. Some women resisted in small ways, whispered names at night, taught forbidden words to children before they were taken, scratched symbols into their skin, marks that reminded them who they had been. They created secret languages, gestures that meant "I remember," patterns traced in the dirt that only other captives would recognize. Some hid objects, a ring buried in the corner of a tent, a thread from their homeland sewn into their clothing, a pebble from a riverbed they would never see again. Tiny anchors to the past, proof that they had existed before this, small rebellions, tiny flames in an ocean of darkness. Most went out, but some burned for decades, hidden, secret, waiting for someone to see. Remember that Oxford study, the genetic legacy of the Mongols? Here's what it actually found: a Y chromosome lineage originating in Mongolia 1,000 years ago. The carriers, approximately 16 million men alive today. 0.5% of all men on Earth. In Mongolia, 8%. In Central Asia, 3%. Even thousands of miles from the Mongol homeland, the markers appear. This isn't natural reproduction. Even the most successful kings don't leave this footprint. Pharaohs ruled for centuries and left nothing like this. Roman emperors had harems and their genetic traces barely detectable. This required something different, something systematic, organized, industrial. The researchers couldn't prove it traced to Genghis Khan specifically, but the timeline matches, the geography matches, the scale matches. And when you understand the caravans, the numbers make terrible sense. Genghis Khan, his sons, his grandsons, access to hundreds of thousands of women across generations. Not randomly, systematically, generation after generation, for over a century. The empire continued the system long after Genghis Khan died in 1227. His sons expanded it, his grandsons refined it. For 150 years the machine kept running. Each generation of Mongol rulers had access to the caravans. Each generation added their genetic material to the conquered populations. It wasn't just one man, it was a dynasty, a system that perpetuated itself across time. By the time the empire collapsed, the damage was permanent, written into the DNA of millions. Those 16 million men aren't just a scientific curiosity, they're evidence, living proof that the system worked, that it achieved exactly what Genghis Khan designed it to achieve. Somewhere in the world right now, a man carries genetic proof his ancestor was a Mongol warrior. He might live in Kazakhstan, or Iran, or China, or Poland. The markers have spread that far, but he also carries something invisible, the contribution of a woman who was taken, numbered, allocated, a woman who once had a name, a family, a pattern at her mother's loom, a life that was stolen in a single morning. He'll never know her name, no one will, but she's there, in his cells, in his blood, in the chromosomes that make him who he is, the ghost of a girl who became a number. The cities are gone now. Merv, possibly the largest city in the world, is ruins in the Turkmenistan desert. Most people have never heard of it. Urgench, the Mongols diverted a river to destroy it. Today, an archaeological site few can find on a map. Balkh, Nishapur, Samarkand, some rebuilt, others vanished completely. And with them, the women who carried their memories. The songs they sang, the stories they told, the patterns they wove, the recipes they cooked, the prayers they whispered. Languages that had been spoken for 1,000 years went silent within a generation. All erased. In 2018, archaeologists excavating a Mongol-era site in Kazakhstan found a woman's grave. She was buried, differently from Mongol women. Different position, different orientation, as if she never fully accepted the culture that claimed her, as if, even in death, she was resisting. Analysis showed she grew up in Persia, but spent her adult life in Central Asia, over 2,000 miles from where she was born. Her bones showed multiple childbirths, at least 6, maybe more. Her teeth showed malnutrition in childhood. better nutrition later, the signature of someone who went from freedom to captivity, from starvation to feeding, from person to property. She was buried with two objects, a small bronze mirror, Persian style, something from her old life, something she had kept hidden for decades, something she had looked into every night, trying to remember who she was, and a child's toy, Mongol design, from her new one, from the life she never chose. She was between 45 and 50, old enough to have seen grandchildren who spoke Mongolian, who worshipped the eternal sky, who never knew their grandmother once had a different name. She carried that Persian mirror for 30 years, trying to remember the face of the girl she used to be. Zarina probably didn't survive, but let's imagine she did. Let's imagine she lived into her 40s, had children, watched them taken at 3, had more, watched them taken 2. Let's imagine she kept something from Samarkand, a thread from her mother's loom, a pebble from her courtyard, a fragment of the pattern she was learning, something she touched at night, something that reminded her she was once Zarina, daughter of a silk merchant, a girl who was learning to weave. Let's imagine she whispered her real name to herself, every night, for 30 years, in a language no one around her spoke anymore. Zarina, Zarina, Zarina. A word that meant nothing to her captors, everything to her. And on the day she died, she was still whispering it. But her children didn't hear. They had been raised Mongol. They spoke a language she never taught them. They worshipped gods she didn't recognize. When they buried her, they didn't know what name to put on the grave, so they put nothing, and the silence grew. That silence lasted 800 years, but silence isn't erasure, and forgotten isn't gone. The women of the caravans left no written records, no memoirs, no diaries. They weren't allowed to, but they left something else, something the Mongols never intended. They left their DNA, scattered across continents, carried in the blood of descendants who would never know their names. Somewhere in the cells of 16 million men, the evidence remains. Not of Genghis Khan's triumph, of the women he tried to erase. They lived, they endured, they were silenced, but their ghosts are still here, written in chromosomes, scattered across continents, carried in the blood of strangers who will never know their names. Waiting for someone to remember. This is Crown and Dagger. We don't sanitize history. We show you what actually happened, because the past isn't dead. It's waiting in the dark, waiting for someone to remember. If you want more stories the world tried to bury, hit subscribe and drop a comment. What other dark truths should we uncover?